Good morning. I'm Stephen Leake. I'm an elder at First Presbyterian Church of Mesquite, and I'm the teacher of the Discipleship Sunday School class there. Today we're continuing with our study of the Gospel of John, and our curriculum is the Daily Bible Study Series by Professor William Barclay. The text for our scripture comes from the New Revised Standard Version of the Bible, which is the Bible that we use in the pews in our sanctuary. Last week, we ended chapter 4, and we ended it with a discussion of how some scholars think that chapters 5 and 6 have been switched because the chronology is all wrong. We left Jesus in Galilee, but when chapter 5 starts, he's in Jerusalem. So there is some confusion there, but we're not going to switch the chapters like some theologians think. We're going to study them in order, even though they might not be chronological. So we've just finished the story of the Samaritan woman at the well and her encounter with Jesus Christ. And today, like I said, we're in Jerusalem for a feast, and we'll start chapter 5. Today we're going to use as our scripture verses 1 through 9 of chapter 5. After this there was a festival of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now in Jerusalem by the sheep gate there is a pool, called in Hebrew Beth Zatha, which has 5 porticos. In these lay many invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. Now here, some Bibles omit the next bit of scripture. I'm just going to put a parenthesis here. Waiting for the stirring of the water, for an angel of the Lord went down at certain seasons into the pool and stirred up the water. Whoever stepped in first after the stirring of the water was made well from whatever disease that person had. Close that imaginary parenthesis. Verse 5. One man was there who had been ill for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had been there a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be made well?" The sick man answered, "Sir, I have no one to put me into the well when the water is stirred. And while I am making my way, someone else steps down ahead of me." Jesus said to him, "Stand up, take your mat, and walk." At once the man was made well, and he took up his mat and began to walk. Now there were 3 Jewish feasts, which were feasts of the obligation: Passover, Pentecost, and Tabernacles. Every adult male Jew who lived within 15 miles of Jerusalem was legally bound to attend them. Now, if we take chapter 6 before chapter 5, we may think of this feast as Pentecost, because the events of chapter 6 happened when the Passover was near. The Passover was mid-April, and Pentecost is 7 weeks later. John always shows us Jesus attending the great feast, for Jesus did not disregard the obligations of Jewish worship. To him, it was not a duty, but a delight, a privilege to worship with his own people. When Jesus arrived in Jerusalem, he was apparently alone because there's no mention of the disciples. He found his way to this famous pool. Its name was Beth Zatha, which means house of olive. The word for pool is Kalambethron, which means to dive. The pool was deep enough to swim in. Now, as I said before, verse 4 is not in any of the oldest, most respected manuscripts, and was probably added as an explanation of why the invalid wanted to get into the water. Beneath the pool was a subterranean stream which every now and again bubbled up and disturbed the water. The belief was that the disturbance was caused by an angel and that the first person to get into the pool would be healed from any illness. To us, this is just mere superstition. But it was the kind of belief which was spread all over the world in that day. People believed in all kinds of spirits and demons. The air was thick with them. And every stream, every well, every pool had a resident spirit. Further, people were specially impressed with the holiness of water, especially rivers and streams. And in that climate, water was precious, and that made it valuable. Swollen, fast-flowing rivers could be so powerful that it's not surprising that they were so impressed. Water was the most valuable and potentially the most dangerous of all things. The people who waited for the pool in Jerusalem to be disturbed were children of their time, and they believed in the things of their time. It may be that as Jesus walked around, the man of this story was pointed out to him as a most pitiable case. His disability made it unlikely, even impossible, that he would ever be the first to get into the pool after it was troubled. He had no one to help him in, and Jesus was always the friend of the friendless and the helper of the person who had no help. Jesus did not trouble to read the man a lecture on the uselessness of superstition, waiting for the water to be moved. His one desire was to help, and so he healed the man who had waited so long. In this story, we see very clearly the conditions under which the power of Jesus operated. He gave orders to people, and in proportion as they tried to obey, power came to them. First, Jesus began by asking the man if he wanted to be cured. It was not a foolish question. The man had waited for 38 years, and it might well have been that hope had died and left behind a passive and dull despair. The man might be well content to remain an invalid, for if cured, he would have other problems, like how to earn a living. He wanted to be healed, though he did not see how he could be, since he had no one to help him. The first essential towards receiving the healing power of Jesus is to have an intense desire for it. Second, Jesus went on to tell the man to get up. It is as if he said to him, "Bend your will to it, and you and I can do this thing together." We must realize our own helplessness, so miracles can happen when we unite with God's power. Third, Jesus was commanding the man to attempt the impossible. "Get up," he said. Now, his bed was nothing more than a pallet, and Jesus simply told him to pick it up and carry it away. The man made an effort along with Christ, and he was healed. Fourth, here is the road to achievement. There are so many things in this world which defeat us. But when we have the intensity of desire and determination to make the effort, hopeless as it may seem, the power of Christ gets its opportunity. And with him we can conquer the things that for a long time have conquered us. There are scholars who think that this passage is an allegory. The man stands for the people of Israel. The 5 porches stand for the 5 books of the law. In the porches, people lay ill. The law could show people their sin, but could never mend it. The law could uncover people's weakness, but could not cure them. The law, like those porches, sheltered sick souls, but could never heal them. The 38 years stand for the 38 years in which the Jews wandered in the desert before they entered the promised land, or maybe for the number of centuries they had been waiting for the Messiah. The stirring of the water stands for baptism. In point of fact, early Christian art often portrayed the man as rising from the baptismal waters, carrying a bed on his back. It may well be that it is possible to read these meanings into this passage, but it's highly unlikely that John wrote it as an allegory. It has that vivid stamp of factual truth. But we would do well to remember that any Bible story has more in it than is on the surface. There are deeper truths below the surface. And even simple stories are meant to leave us face to face with beautiful, eternal things. Thank you for watching today, and God bless.